I'm Goat Boy, and welcome to...
The Origins of Krampus. Before I jump into it, I just want to plug a friend of mine's podcast, the JTO Paranormal Podcast, Journey to Obscurity Paranormal Podcast. It's a pretty funny duo, Bryant Tarpley and Andrew Ouellette, a couple of comedians. They actually did an episode on Krampus, and coincidentally enough, the Krampus in the video seems to look something like the hat that I wore in my last Yule video. I'm not sure what that's about, but yeah, so go check them out and boost their subscriber count. It's a lot lower than it should be, and yeah, they're pretty funny, so give them a look. And with that, jumping into the origins of Krampus. Krampus, Dark Lord of Yule, punisher of wicked children, an antithesis of the Yuletide gift giver. Where does he come from? Is he a modern creation or a remnant of the pre-Christian past? First, let's dispel one popular myth. He is not the son of Hel, Norse goddess of the underworld. Hel is specifically Norse. Krampus comes from the Austrian Alps and continental Germanic lore. In that side of heathenry, Brutta and Frau Hola seem to share Hel's semantic center. More on that when I finally do a Hel video. But they were mentioned in the Skadi video, if you haven't seen that, and would like more information. There's an interesting connection to the maternal goddess, but back to Krampus.
Goat Boy. Hey, child!
Hel is not in continental Germanic lore, so that's a fabrication, no truth to it. If you'll recall in my Is Santa Odin video, I mentioned there was an attempt to make the patron saint of children the boogeyman, which ultimately failed. That's another possible influence on the horned spirit of Yule. But let's go back further into Germanic lore. Krampuslauf, the Krampus parade, may be a reflection of the wild hunt. In Germanic lore, it is Holler who leads the charge. Holler is the Germanic Uller, Uller being the Norse god of the hunt, who is said to take Odin's place as chieftain when the Allfather is away. If you'll recall in archetypal analysis, we see gods of similar stripes blend and merge based on cultural needs and influences. So in the south, we see Uller lead the hunt. Not a huge leap. Examining Holler, we see he is described as Ewiger Jäger, the eternal hunter. He is connected to death and depicted with horns, possibly a similar being to the English Herne the Hunter, a euhemeristic origin of a huntsman who was later deified. It's difficult to find Germanic lore without Norse influence, but that seems to be a consensus. We'll go over him more when I do an Uller deep dive. But in that, we see a dark depiction of the Yule ride. Odin, too, is a god of death, as a psychopomp, an entity that helps the dead move on to the next step. Moving on to the goat aspects of Krampus, we see a Scandinavian myth in the Julebok. I'm currently editing a very long Thor video, but the Yule goat may be associated with Thor's goats. Donner, or Thunar, in the German, is the equivalent of Thor, so it's plausible. There's a ritual resurrection of the Yule goat that may be associated with Thor's battle against the forces of chaos. If you'll recall, the wild hunt serves a similar purpose, fighting back the spirits of ice and cold that kill crops, and other things associated with negative parts of winter. So, not a big goat leap. In Sweden, this traditional resurrection is called the Yule offer, and was, for a time, demonized by Christians as a wandering goat beast. Eventually, the Julebok went back to his benevolent incarnation. In some traditions, their equivalent to Santa even rides the Yule goat, a depiction that has led some to thinking Thor may be in the running for a possible origin to Santa Claus. And Thor does resurrect his goats, using Mjolnir, after consuming their bodies, conveniently made of meat. Another Scandinavian tradition is Julebukking. Julebukking is the Norwegian name. It's kind of a cross between Halloween and Krampuslauf, where people dress as Yule goats and go door to door. Some Krampus traditions have a similar practice, though it seems to be more to scare kids on December 5th, Krampus night. So, in conclusion, Krampus' origins seem similar to Santa. History is never a cut and dry, one-for-one equivalent, and Krampus very much seems to be a darker, vilified Yule goat. Krampuslauf is probably the Christian manipulation of Julebukking, and combine that with the equally vilified Wild Hunt, we begin to see Krampus, a demonic reaction to what was probably meant to scare away malevolent forces. The spiritual relies on the symbolic, and like repels like. Just like Pazuzu is a Mesopotamian demon who scares off other demons, Krampus probably comes to us from the tradition of the eternal hunter being bigger and scarier than the forces of chaos that plague mankind. So, rather than the patron saint and protector of children being the Christmas boogeyman, that role conveniently went to a scapegoat. In heathenry, our gods don't lord over us. They aren't divine punishers. Norse and Germanic traditions posit that local spirits and ancestors are more the punishers. But in the same way, you don't want to have a bad relationship with the neighbor. I've talked a bit about Alfar and Landvetir. We'll go over that in a future video. The heathen worldview doesn't have that fire and brimstone to enforce a moral concept. It's more local. Krampus, earlier incarnations, probably scared away the malevolent denizens of chaos until the church rebranded him the Dark Lord of Yule. So maybe we should focus more on the aspects of the Yule goat and the horned god of the hunt, driving back the icy denizens of chaos who wish us harm. But of course, it's important that we establish new traditions, learning from the old, new tribal identity that we pass down, bringing the old ways forward into a positive light. You have to ask yourself, your hearth, and your kindred, how will you celebrate Yule? How will you incorporate the Horned Lord of Yule? Support your local Krampus. Skull!